Okay, today's afternoon story is called The Three Strong Women. Long ago in Japan, there lived a famous wrestler, and he was on his way to the capital city to wrestle before the emperor. He strode down the road on legs thick as the trunks of small trees. He had been walking for 7 hours and could, and probably would, walk for 7 more without getting tired. The time was autumn. The sky was a cold, watery blue, the air chilly. In the small, bright sun, the trees along the roadside glowed red and orange. The wrestler hummed to himself, "Zun, zun, zun," in time with the long swing of his legs. The wind blew through his thin brown robe, and he wore no sword at his side. He felt proud that he needed no sword, even in the darkest and loneliest places. The icy air on his body only reminded him that few tailors would have been able to make expensive warm clothes for a man so broad and tall. He felt much as a wrestler should, strong, healthy, and rather conceited. A soft roar of a fast-moving water beyond the trees told him that he passed above a riverbank. He zun-zunned louder. He loved the sound of his voice and wanted it to sound clearly above the rushing water. He thought, "They call me Forever Mountain because I am such a good, strong wrestler. Big, too. I'm a fine, brave man, and far too modest ever to say so." Just then he saw a girl who must have come up from the river, for she steadied a bucket on her head. The hands on the bucket were small, and there was a dimple on each thumb just below the knuckle. She was a round girl with red cheeks and a nose like a friendly button. Her eyes looked as though she were thinking of 10,000 funny stories at once. She clambered up onto the road and walked ahead of the wrestler, jolly and bounceful. "If I don't tickle that fat girl, I shall regret it all of my life," said the wrestler under his breath. "She's sure to go squeak, and I shall laugh and laugh. If she drops her bucket, that will be even funnier. I can always run and fill it again, and even carry it home for her." He tiptoed up and poked her lightly in the ribs with one huge finger. "Kuchu, kuchu, kuchu, ku," he said, a fine, ticklish sound in Japanese. The girl gave a satisfying squeal, giggled, and brought one arm down so that the wrestler's hand was caught between it and her body. "Ho, ho, ho! You've caught me. I can't move at all," said the wrestler, laughing. "I know," said the jolly girl. He felt that it was very good-tempered of her to take a joke so well, and started to pull his hand free. Somehow, he could not. He tried again, using a little more strength. Now, let me go," he said. "I am a very powerful man. If I pull too hard, I might hurt you." "Pull," said the girl. "I admire powerful men." She began to walk, and though the wrestler tugged and pulled until his feet dug great furrows in the ground, he had to follow. She couldn't have paid him less attention if he'd been a puppy, a small one. 10 minutes later, still tugging while trudging helplessly after her, he was glad that the road was lonely and no one was there to see. "Please let me go," he pleaded. "I am the famous wrestler Forever Mountain. I must go and show my strength before the emperor." He burst out weeping from shame and confusion. "And you're hurting my hand." The girl steadied the bucket on her head with her free hand and dimpled sympathetically over her shoulder. "You poor, sweet little Forever Mountain," she said. "Are you tired? Shall I carry you? I can leave the water here and come back for it later." "I do not want you to carry me. I want you to let me go, and then I want to forget I ever saw you. What did you want with me? Moaned the pitiful wrestler. I only want to help you, said the girl, now pulling him steadily up and up a narrow mountain path. Oh, I am sure you'll have no more trouble than anyone else when you come up against the other wrestlers. You'll win, or else you'll lose, and you won't be too badly hurt either way. But aren't you afraid you might meet a really strong man someday? Forever Mountain turned white. He stumbled. He was imagining being laughed at throughout Japan as Hardly Ever Mountain. She glanced back. You see, tired already, she said. I'll walk more slowly. Why don't you come along to my mother's house and let us make a strong man of you? The wrestling in the capital isn't due to begin for 3 months. I know because grandmother thought she'd go. You'd be spending all that time in bad company and wasting what little power you have. All right, 3 months. I'll come along, said the wrestler. He felt he had nothing more to lose. Also, he feared that the girl might become angry if he refused and place him in the top of a tree until he changed his mind. Fine, she said happily. We are almost there. She freed his hand. It had become red and a little swollen. But if you break your promise and run off, I shall have to chase you and carry you back. Soon they arrived in a small valley. A simple farmhouse with a thatched roof stood in the middle. Grandmother is at home, but she is an old lady, so she's probably sleeping. The girl shaded her eyes with one hand. But Mother should be bringing our cow back from the field. Oh, there's Mother now. She waved. The woman coming around the corner of the house put down the cow she was carrying and waved back. She smiled and came across the grass, walking with a lively bounce like her daughter's. Well, maybe her bounce was a little more solid, thought the wrestler. Excuse me, she said, brushing some cow hair from her dress and dimpling, also like her daughter. These mountain paths are full of stones. They hurt the cow's feet. And who is this nice young man you've brought, Maramy? The girl explained. And we have only 3 months, she finished anxiously. Well, it's not long enough to do much, but it's not so short a time we can't do something, said her mother, looking thoughtful. But he does look terribly feeble. He'll need a lot of good things to eat. Maybe when he gets stronger, he can help grandmother with some of the easy work about the house. That will be fine, said the girl. And she called her grandmother loudly, for the old lady was a little deaf. I'm coming, came a creaky voice from inside the house, and a little old woman, leaning on a stick and looking very sleepy, tottered out of the door. As she came toward them, she stumbled over the roots of a great oak tree. Heh, my eyes aren't what they used to be. That's the 4th time this month I've stumbled over that tree, she complained, and, wrapping her skinny arms about its trunk, pulled it out of the ground. Oh, grandmother, you should have let me pull it up for you, said Maramy. I hope I didn't hurt my poor old back, muttered the old lady. She called out, Daughter, throw that tree away like a good girl so no one will fall over it. But make sure it doesn't hit anybody. You can help Mother with the tree, Maramy said to Forever Mountain. On second thought, you'd better not help. Just watch. Her mother went to the tree, picked it up in her 2 hands, and threw it. Up went the tree, sailing end over end, growing smaller and smaller as it flew. It landed with a faint crash far up the mountainside. Oh, how clumsy, she said. I meant to throw it over the mountain. It's probably blocking the path now, and I'll have to get up early tomorrow to move it." The wrestler was not listening. He had very quietly fainted. "Oh, we must put him to bed," said Marami. "Poor feeble young man," said her mother. "I hope we can do something for him." "Here, let me carry him. He is light," said the grandmother. She slung him over her shoulder and carried him into the house, creaking along with her cane. The next day they began the work of making Forever Mountain over into what they thought a strong man should be. They gave him the simplest food to eat and the toughest. Day by day they prepared his rice with less and less water until no ordinary man could have chewed or digested it. Every day he was made to do the work of 5 men, and every evening he wrestled with grandmother. Marami and her mother agreed that grandmother, being old and feeble, was the least likely to injure him accidentally. They hoped the exercise might be good for the old lady's rheumatism. He grew stronger and stronger, but was hardly aware of it. Grandmother could still throw him easily into the air and catch him again, without ever changing her sweet old smile. He quite forgot that outside this valley he was one of the greatest wrestlers in Japan, and was called Forever Mountain. His legs had been like logs. Now they were like pillars. His big hands were hard as stones, and when he cracked his knuckles, the sound was like trees splitting on a cold night. Sometimes he did an exercise that wrestlers do in Japan, raising one foot high above the ground and bringing it down with a crash. Then people in nearby villages looked up at the winter sky and told one another that it was very late in the year for thunder. Soon he could pull up a tree as well as the grandmother. He could even throw one, but only a small distance. One evening, near the end of his 3rd month, he wrestled with grandmother and held her down for half a minute. "Hey, hey," she chortled and got up, smiling with every wrinkle. "I would never have believed it." Marami squealed with joy and threw her arms around him gently, for she was afraid of cracking his ribs. "Very good, very good. What a strong man," said her mother, who had just come home from the fields, carrying, as usual, the cow. She put the cow down and patted the wrestler on the back. They agreed that he was now ready to show some real strength before the emperor. "Take the cow along with you tomorrow when you go," said the mother. "Sell her, and buy yourself a belt, a silken belt. Buy the fattest and heaviest one you can find. Wear it when you appear before the emperor as a souvenir from us." "I wouldn't think of taking your only cow. You've already done too much for me. And you'll need her to plow the fields, won't you?" They burst out laughing. Marami squealed. Her mother roared. The grandmother cackled so hard and long that she choked and had to be pounded on the back. "Oh dear," said the mother, still laughing. "You didn't think we used our cow for anything like work? Why, grandmother here is stronger than 5 cows. "The cow is our pet," Marami giggled. "She has lovely brown eyes." "But it really gets tiresome having to carry her back and forth each day so that she has enough grass to eat," said her mother. "Then you must let me give you all the prize money that I win," said Forever Mountain. "Oh no, we wouldn't think of it," said Marami, "because we all like you too much to sell you anything, and it is not proper to accept gifts of money from strangers." "True," said Forever Mountain. "I will now ask your mother and grandmother's permission to marry you. I want to be one of the family." "Oh, I'll get a wedding dress ready," said Marami. The mother and grandmother pretended to consider very seriously, but they quickly agreed. Next morning, Forever Mountain tied his hair up in the top knot that all Japanese wrestlers wear and got ready to leave. He thanked Marumi and her mother and bowed very low to the grandmother, since she was the oldest and had been a fine wrestling partner. Then he picked up the cow in his arms and trudged over the mountain. When he reached the top, he slung the cow over one shoulder and waved goodbye to Marumi. At the first town he came to, Forever Mountain sold the cow. She brought a good price because she was unusually fat from never having worked in her life. With the money, he bought the heaviest silken belt he could find. When he reached the palace grounds, many of the other wrestlers were already there, sitting about, eating enormous bowls of rice, comparing one another's weight, and telling stories. They paid little attention to Forever Mountain, except to wonder why he had arrived so late this year. Some of them noticed that he had grown very quiet and took no part at all in their boasting. All the ladies and gentlemen of the court were waiting in a special courtyard for the wrestling to begin. They wore many robes, one on top of another, heavy with embroidery and gold cloth, and sweat ran down their faces and froze in the winter afternoon. The gentlemen had long swords so weighted with gold and precious stones that they could never have used them, even if they had known how. The court ladies, with their long black hair hanging down behind, had their faces painted dead white, which made them look frightened. They had pulled out their real eyebrows and painted new ones high above the place where eyebrows are supposed to be, and this made them all look as though they were very surprised at something. Behind a screen sat the emperor, by himself, because he was too noble for ordinary people to look at. He was a lonely old man, with a kind, tired face. He hoped the wrestling would end quickly, so that he could go to his room and write poems. The first two wrestlers chosen to fight were Forever Mountain and a wrestler who was said to have the biggest stomach in the country. He and Forever Mountain both threw some salt into the ring. It was understood that this drove away evil spirits. Then the other wrestler, moving his stomach somewhat out of the way, raised his foot and brought it down with a fearful stamp. He glared fiercely at Forever Mountain as if to say, "Now you stamp, you poor frightened man." Forever Mountain raised his foot. He brought it down. There was a sound like thunder. The earth shook, and the other wrestler bounced into the air and out of the ring, as graceful as any soap bubble. He picked himself up and bowed to the emperor's screen. "The earth god is angry. Possibly there is something the matter with the salt," he said. "I do not think I shall wrestle this season." And he walked out, looking very suspiciously over one shoulder at Forever Mountain. 5 other wrestlers then and there decided that they were not wrestling this season either. They all looked annoyed with Forever Mountain. From then on, Forever Mountain brought his foot down lightly. As each wrestler came into the ring, he picked him up very gently, carried him out, and placed him before the emperor's screen, bowing most courteously every time. The court lady's eyebrows went up even higher. The gentlemen looked disturbed and a little afraid. They loved to see fierce, strong men tugging and grunting at each other, but Forever Mountain was a little too much for them. Only the emperor was happy behind his screen, for now, with the wrestling over so quickly, he would have that much more time to write his poems. He ordered all the prize money handed over to Forever Mountain. "But," he said, "you had better not wrestle any more." He stuck a finger through the screen and waggled it at the other wrestlers, who were sitting on the ground, weeping with disappointment like great fat babies. Forever Mountain promised not to wrestle anymore. Everyone looked relieved. The wrestler sitting on the ground almost smiled. I think I shall become a farmer, Forever Mountain said, and left at once to go back to Marumi. Marumi was waiting for him. When she saw him coming, she ran down the mountain, picked him up together with heavy bags of prize money, and carried him halfway up the mountainside. Then she giggled and put him down. The rest of the way she let him carry her. Forever Mountain kept his promise to the emperor and never fought in public again. His name was forgotten in the capitals. But up in the mountains, sometimes the earth shakes and rumbles, and they say that is Forever Mountain and Marumi's grandmother practicing wrestling in the hidden valley. The end.